All rise. The Honorable County Court of Bell County now session. The Honorable Jerry Ford will be presiding. This court may in session. The Honorable Jerry Ford adjourns.
Mr. Gary Carter will read our invocation to that.
Our kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this another beautiful day, dear Lord. Thank you for all our blessings, dear Heavenly Father, and all the blessings we receive down through life, dear Lord. I ask you, Lord, that you'll lead us and guide us in all things that we do, dear Heavenly Father, and may we look to thee for everything, dear Heavenly Father. Forgive us of our wrongs and mistakes and shortcomings, Heavenly Father. Bless those that are sick tonight, dear Heavenly Father, this time with you. Heal them, dear Lord, that's pleasing to thee, dear Heavenly Father. Go with us, dear Heavenly Father, and lead us and guide us in all things we do, dear Lord. We humbly pray in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Carter, Dean, will lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here.
Shane Burke.
Here.
Gary Clary.
Here.
Roy Hickey.
Here.
Bill Ferguson.
Here.
Jerry Ford.
Here.
Bud Gregory.
Here.
Landon Dillon.
Here.
Richard Hart.
Here.
Dwight Jewell.
Here.
William Johnson. Here. Richard Johnson.
Here.
Raymond Jones. Here. David Norman.
Here.
Amber Russell. Here. Grace Thomas. Here. Jerry Walsh.
Here.
Steve Whitaker.
Here.
Justin Freeman.
Here.
20 present.
Thank you, Gary, for passed out in the facts and should have time to look at them and review them. Right here, the corrections, additions, deletions. If somebody goes to read it, I'll be putting motion on the wall. I hear a second. Second, Mr. Hodge. All in favor of the minutes as presented, if you know, say aye. Any opposed, with a no vote. We stand approved. I have two announcements for you. The PCSA conference is in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, May the 21st through the 23rd. If you wanted to go, commissioners, you need to send this Amy, so she can get you signed up. One other announcement, commissioners, please turn in the reports. I don't have any other amendments to the agenda other than what I gave you the other night at the work session. Citizens' response to the agenda. We have some, I guess we do, don't we? Okay, we need to approve the agenda as presented to you. Need a motion.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Mr. Young, and second by Ms. Linda Johnson. All in favor, if that be one, say aye. Any opposed, with a no vote. Ayes have it, so we'll be working with the agenda that's in front of you tonight. Citizens' response to the agenda, we have a couple of ordinances tonight and public hearings, so if you come to the streets, either one of those, you won't have to sign in, but if it's resolutions or ordinance before that, you will need to sign in the street. You will need to sign in the street. Anyone else wishing to speak to something other than the public hearing? Anyone else before we move on? Representative, so we had no report tonight. So we move into the county mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I kind of have a short report tonight. First thing I want to cover is the landfill. We did enter into an agreement with Triad Environmental Services that was approved, the choice of the Professional Services Committee. And they are currently working with Mr. Salih, who's the head of the Public Works and Sanitation Department, to do digging at the site to determine exactly where the extent of the cap is as far as where the waste is placed. They were out there last week and they expect to be out there maybe 2 or 3 more days this week. So that's currently where we're at right there. As soon as they determine what the extent of where the extent of the garbage is, then they're going to go back and do our corrective action work plan, which we have to have into the state by May 15th. When we did retain them, they thought that that was more than enough time to get all the work done beforehand and get the corrective action work plan submitted to the state. So we should be on time with that. Next thing I'm going to cover is the landscape. I really don't have much of an update on that from last month. There has been some emails going back and forth from TDOT to Ms. Taylor, who's took over from Mr. Jewell as the local representative. There was some confusion there. TDOT thought we hadn't submitted some documents that we have. We think we've got that straightened out. So at this point, we've submitted everything we were supposed to. So that project, as far as our timeline for getting everything submitted, we're actually probably about a month ahead of schedule. So I think we're in pretty good shape as far as that goes. The only thing we're going to wait for is TDOT has to approve this for construction by July 15th, or else the federal government's going to take back the funds. But we think we're in very good shape to have approval much further ahead of that. Third thing I'm going to talk about is the Highway 141 proposal. It's going to be one of the resolutions you do tonight should be Resolution 2019-12-659. This is just kind of a standard process in a project. I talked to someone at TDOT and they said this is just kind of boilerplate language. They send it out for all projects. They said it's either sent out usually ahead of construction or during construction. For ours, they said it's actually going to be ahead of construction. So what the timeline is on when construction is going to start, well then you don't get a whole lot of answers on that. But this is part of the process, and we are moving forward in the process to get the new section 141 across the river connecting to Highway 10 built. So this is just a step in the process. It's nothing really specific to Trousdale County other than putting the project description in there and location and whatnot, but this is just standard contract language they use for all their projects. The last thing we'll talk about is the Built Environment Grant. This did go in front of the Parks and Recreation Committee. What it is it's a grant through the State Department of Health to do a project in any county, and all 95 counties got this, so it was not a competitive grant. It was kind of a real short turnaround on this, and so they came to my office and asked me, is there anything I thought we could use this for? And while I was campaigning, and since I've been mayor, one of the biggest issues people have is trying to make improvements at the park. So I said, we need to look at doing like a master improvement plan for the park. So they said this would be really good for that, because in the future, when there are competitive grants, we can use this plan that comes out of this process as a submittal to support our application and use that to get specific things funded for improvements at the park. And if you approve that, then I will sign the grant contract. We have that and send that back to the state. So hopefully we'll be able to move forward on that. The Professional Services Selection Committee did meet and did choose an engineering firm. They chose Kimley Horn, who's also currently working on a streetscape project. They did the landscaping and some other things for the streetscape project. So they are familiar with the community, and the committee really liked their proposal, so that's who they selected for that. That's really all the items I have right now. Is there any questions on anything I've addressed?
Mayor, would you like to report on the land sale?
The land sale, I'll actually have to defer to maybe Mr. Beller or someone like that. I was told it went really well. Some pieces of property brought more than what was actually owed on it, and some brought just what was owed on the properties. I will say there is something that kind of goes along with this. One of the resolutions I asked to be addressed tonight is actually addressed at the building committee, has passed through there, is to establish a committee for the resale of land. We have had some people that's contacted my office wanting to buy pieces of property that the county has come into possession of during past tax sales. But looking at a statute, we have to have this committee and follow a statutory process before we can sell those pieces of land. And so we need to get that started and get this committee in place so we can abide by the statute, send out requests for proposals, any properties, get back proposals on people willing to buy those properties, and then move through the process so we can start liquidating some of these properties we're holding on to. Some of them, there's one tract on Purdue Branch Spur we've held since the 1950s. So hopefully we'll be able to get that going and reduce some of our properties that we're holding that we're really not going to do anything with.
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions for the mayor?
When you're selling property, you reject that for anybody. What I'm getting from is, you say you got the government employees, are they authorized to buy the property?
That's something we'll have to look more into. I do know there is a provision, I believe, as long as it goes to, and Mr. Miller would have to correct me on this, I'm going off memory, so I will defer to anything he says. I think as long as it goes to a public auction and they bid as part of the public auction and there is no behind the scenes dealing or anything like that, I think they can do it that way, which we will put it in the newspaper. There is a very specific process that has to be followed by statute, and one of them is we have to put public notice in the newspaper saying how they have to submit their proposals to purchase the property and everything that would go through that. And once the committee gets that, they'll go through them. If somebody has submitted a proposal that is more than the taxes and interest and everything that's owed on to it, the committee can vote to give it or sell it to that person who's made the highest offer. If none of the offers come in above the amount that's owed on the property, then the committee can look at it and actually vote to sell it for less than what was owed on the property, but it has to go through a process to do that as well.
Any other questions for the mayor? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Audit committee? Audit committee,
We had no meeting.
budget and finance did meet. First thing we did was go over the trustees' balance sheet, which we do every month. And I tell you for a fact, the county don't owe no $20 million either. The county is in pretty good shape. We don't know yet how this year is going to turn out as far as next year's budget is concerned, but hopefully we'll be able to get by without having to raise taxes. Charter review,
No meeting.
communications,
Yes, we met on the 11th. The two companies came that were the finalists in being our web design development company. We chose Robotics. They're out of Michigan, I believe. So we went ahead and made a proposal to cover the cost that it would cost to have the company make and then also maintain our county website. There's no future meetings set at this time.
thank you. County buildings,
That committee met Tuesday, April 9th at 6 o'clock. We discussed quite a few things, repairs on the county buildings. Representative from the Lee Company came and talked to us about what they can do as far as maintenance on the buildings. We need to get together with Mr. Sullivan and the mayor to decide the extent of what they would be looking at bidding on or giving us a proposal on. We did get the cost back from Henley, supply millwork on windows from Marvin Industries on the building here. We did it in 3 phases, and I passed those figures out to the committee to look at. We'll get back into that at our next meeting. The total cost for all 3 floors would run somewhere between $112,000 and $131,000 plus installation. We could do it in phases and break it up. No decision has been made on it. The mayor asked that we approve a resolution that's on our docket tonight about establishing a committee to address the county selling the land that it has to pay as a result of tax saving. And this did pass unanimously. It is on the docket tonight. There's some discussion of some homeless people living in the Living History Museum on White Oak. The sheriff and the mayor will be addressing that issue in the weeks to come. And talk again about the derelict property, still trying to put together the best course of action on that. And we do not have another meeting scheduled at this time.
thank you. Economic development,
We met on April the 8th. It was a short meeting. The primary order of business was decide whether to pay for Mayor Chambers to attend the Tennessee Business and Economic and Community Development Training in Nashville, May the 6th through the 9th for $1,000. This was, we voted to do this.
thank you. Education oversight, we met on the 11th. We discussed the fiscal capacity, how it was going to affect the school this year. We do not have a definite amount that the state's going to give to the schools yet, so no action was taken on that. We did spend a little bit of time talking about the money that's restricted that the school has. Emergency services,
We met on April 8th. We discussed mostly, just matter of fact, we just kind of sat around and talk about training. If people had their certificates and all that, we asked Mr. Beaver, and he answered those questions, and we just had a nice little talk.
Employee personnel,
We haven't met this last month, I want to talk to Mayor Gaines an update. I've had some of the committee members come to me and want to talk about some other stuff, so I didn't know if y'all were ready yet on some of the stuff you guys are working on.
Well, after looking at it and also getting an example of Smith County's policies from Mr. Beller and talking to Ms. Thomas, we've come to the conclusion that it's almost better to go and reformat and redo a lot of the sections. There was just, like I said before, it's kind of like whack-a-mole. We address one and something else will pop up. Some of it's changes in interpretation of labor regulations and kind of things like that. So we're trying to make sure all that is compliant and get that to Mr. Beller so he can look at it and then get that to department heads, because I don't want to submit it to the county commission without getting the department heads say on it. There are some other issues that may come up that we'll have to take in front of the personnel committee that do not specifically relate to the personnel policy. But I'm still, hopefully by the end of the week, we'll have no more idea of what those are and ask for a date to get those addressed.
We'll probably go ahead and have one for this next month, and if you got anything ready, fine, if you don't, that's okay. I'll check it.
Okay. And I apologize it's taken so long, but having worked on the policy previously, I'm sure as you realize that once you get into it, it's really kind of a barrier to start dealing with.
Last time we worked on it, took us 9 months to get through some of it, we took on the end, we do still have more to do.
Right.
thank you, Bill. Insurance committee, oh, I miss executive. We met on April the 9th. Most everything on the agenda is what we covered in that meeting. There's a couple of amendments to the agenda that we didn't cover, but other than that, everything else was covered. Now, the insurance committee,
This went on April 4th. We had Mr. Tim, this Woodbury, he gave us a pretty good presentation on this county insurance for the employees. It looked like a pretty good plan, a little cheaper for the employees. It's something we're going to check into a little further. He's going to come back in May the 9th at 6 o'clock. If anyone's interested in it, it's pretty interesting. See, we got to make even touch stay in the state commander go with this. But if we look at our state plan, we don't think we can get back in it for 2 years, so this guy's gonna come back. Talk to us again on May 9th. And also, we've got a resolution to use American Fidelity Insurance as a supplemental carrier. I think we're using USA now, it's been offered, but I think this gig's had, not every, like, you know, the USA watch needs to, we recommend American Fidelity, it's one of our resolutions. Supplemental carrier. We got another meeting, May the 9th at 6 o'clock.
who did, oh,
May the 9th, 6 o'clock.
thank you. Law enforcement,
Law Enforcement Committee met April 9th. Primary thrust of the meeting was the Sheriff Russell to go over his plans for the budget year. We talked about the radio towers and equipment at Pumpkin Ranch, and 911 board has voted to help with some of the equipment on that, and in the future trying to look at best how that's going to proceed. Sheriff Russell wants to put security cameras in the Criminal Justice Center. It's looking like that's going to cost $18,000 to $20,000. And most of that, or some of that, can be funded by court fees, if not all. We talked about where they would be, what they would cover, the type of things that they would be. Sheriff Russell, in talking about the upcoming budget, wants to budget more dispatchers. Evidently, the dispatchers are really, our call volume has gone up greatly in the last year or two. And he would also like to ask for a 2.5% salary increase in next year's budget, or 2.8, 2.5. I think the state estimates 2.5, he requested 2.8. And wants to budget for 3 more patrol cars to be able to rotate routine maintenance
parish. And that was it. We didn't vote on any, there was no action on any of this. It was more of a discussion, more of information meeting coming up.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation,
We had no meeting about that scheduled meeting for May the 7th at 7 o'clock.
May the 7th.
Trying to get the final touch on it.
Prison and Oversight, we met on the 18th. Mr. Russell Washington was there and gave an update on status of the prison and did a very good job. I don't know how many of you have noticed here lately, but you're not hearing any anti-propaganda or whatever coming from the prison. I know for myself, I hadn't heard anything now in 2 quarters. And I think the mayor had one letter that I made Mr. Washington aware of, and he's going to get with you on that. I told him he's going to be busy today, but he said he'd get with you in the next few days on that matter. Professional services. We met on April 1st and awarded Triad, like the mayor said, the contract on taking a look at our landfill. A couple of reasons. Number one, they seem to be able to get done with it before any of the others could, and they also think that it'll be cheaper than what we first thought it might be, which was a good thing. And then we also awarded the environment grant to the company. I don't remember the name, Mayor, you called it a while ago.
It's Kimley Horn.
Yeah, and we really liked what they said to us. And this money is a $20,000 grant, but it just goes for telling us what we can do, what we need to do, etc. It's not to be used for anything other than drawing up a plan. Purchase and Oversight, we met on the 18th. Went over everything that needed to be looked at, and the committee thought it was a very good report and didn't have anything to actually complain about, Mayor. Solid Waste.
We've had no meetings this month, but I had one scheduled for
No, you didn't?
maybe scheduled, I have to cancel it out, so it's already late.
Are there any other reports? And you'll see one. Not, we'll move on. Next item on the agenda is appointments. Have 2. Brian King will be appointed to Economic Development Committee. Terry Grigger will be appointed to the Executive Committee, and he'll be removed from the Purchasing and Oversight. Have a motion by
Move to approve.
Moved to approve by Mr. Harsh. I hear a second. Second by Commissioner Ferguson. Any discussion on this? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed with a no vote? All right, we move on to resolution. Resolution 2019-10, 657 is a grant that's the litter and trash along the county, state, and interstate roads and highways, and I believe it also covers the Corps of Engineer property too, doesn't it, Sheriff?
Yeah, we pick up partial of the Corps. Back years ago, the Corps turned over a lot of the lake to us. We have to clean it up now.
This is what, a $10,000 grant?
Somewhere in that neighborhood. It fluctuates up and down every year.
This grant, man, I don't think anybody will be opposed to that. Commissioner Jewell. Have a motion to approve by Commissioner Jewell, a second by Commissioner Johnson. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Opposed with a no vote. Let's move on to resolution 2019-11-658. It's the American Fidelity Insurance Supplement Carrier. And what we're doing is authorizing the mayor to enter into agreement with American Fidelity, which I think they made a pretty good offer in that. Have you read that in your package? I think item number 2 is a pretty good deal. American Fidelity has presented a proposal to the county which they will offer assistance with ACA compliance in section 125, the cafeteria plan, compliance free of charge with the stipulation that they be allowed to offer supplemental insurance to county employees with the employee paying 100% of the cost of the insurance. Yes, Commissioner.
Let's go make motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve from Leonard Gully, second by Commissioner Terry Griggs. Thank you in a minute, Terry. Any other discussion on this motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, with a no vote. Next resolution is 2019-12-659. I think the mayor covered this very well. This is entered into agreement with the state of Tennessee for Cedar Bluff intersection, stop 141 stop, that's where it starts, and you go to Highway 10 to the top of the hill on Highway 10 out here, past 25. I know that Mr. Joel went to a meeting on this, and he seems to think that they'll start on the overpass out there on 25 and 10 and work their way back. It's looking like this is going to come into being, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. All we're doing here is just authorizing the mayor to sign the agreement with the state. Commissioner Linda Johnson makes a motion to approve. Commissioner Russell seconds the motion. Any other discussion on that? Any comments on it? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, with a no vote. (2019-13-660). That's the plan that the bill environment grant plan that the mayor talked about. It's a $20,000 grant. This will fund engineering services to create a master plan for the county park complex. Any other questions on it? Not on entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Terry Gregory, second by Ms. Baker. Commissioner Baker. Any other discussion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, with a no vote. 2019-14-661, to establish resale of the land committee. This is just a committee to take a look at this land. I'd say Mr. Bowen had more to do with picking these people than I did, but we wanted people that had some involvement in property, to have an idea of what it would be worth. So Mr. Harsh, Mr. Ferguson, Mr. Linda Johnson, and myself was appointed to serve on this committee. And I know that Mr. Bower said we'll be meeting pretty soon on it, because we've already started, got a bunch of property sold, and there's going to be some decisions that we made on it. And also for you commissioners to know, he says he thinks there'll be another sale in October. And I think it's very good.
A very good sale this last go around. We had 16 tracks, 5 of them were paid off before the actual sale. And those 5, I think Ms. Jones was about 9,000 total on the sale. Overall, I don't over, which, I believe she said it was $180,000 what we had.
That sounds mighty good. If we do it again in October, we'd be in good shape this year, wouldn't
It takes a lot of work.
it? I know it does. It's a very long, drawn-out process in southern property like that. The good thing, when you get it all prepared, like you said, at least 5 of them come in and pay the taxes on it. Plus the interest and penalty on it. You have a committee proposed in front of you, Commissioner Minor.
Make a motion to approve those people for this committee.
Have a motion and second by, Ms. Jones. Any other discussion on the committee? All in favor, let it be known, saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, no vote. Ayes have it. Now we're going to ordinances. Ordinance 179, 2019, 0109, I'm sorry, is changing from A1 to R1. This was recommended by the Planning Commission on March 11th. And if you look at the next page or two, you can see where it is. It's in the Cato area, I think, of the Merriman Coleman Farm, and I believe this was presented here so Mark could be able to keep the home place. Anyway, it was recommended by the Planning Commission that we pass this. To make sure we have any names on it. Commissioner Lyon,
Make a motion to approve this.
Commissioner Jewell, and second Commissioner Jewell, that we pass this on the first reading. Any other discussion?
Mayor,
Yes.
was the wording ever changed from what said?
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Going from A1 to R1. The reason for that, A1 requires 3 acres of land, and R1 only requires 1. You answer the question? All in favor of it, will be known as saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by no vote? And that's the first reading. Next month, we'll have public hearing and second readings. Ordinance 177, 2019-07. That's the emergency management, emergency medical services, and the volunteer fire department combination. Now, this requires a public hearing, and at this time, I'm going to open the meeting up for a public hearing. I believe everyone had signed this. I think everyone signed this on this particular item right here, so if you would, we'd let you line up over here and go and start speaking. This is a public hearing, and it's your opportunity now to speak. How many we got? You got your stuff there? We've got, looks like 6 or 7 people, so I'm gonna give you about 3 minutes tonight. That should be enough to say what you need to say. Let's see. Mark White?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. I was in your chair just a few years ago. I do not envy you the job that you've got in front of you. I know this has turned into a real hot topic, really divisive in our community, but I'm in favor of it. I feel like we can improve services, not to say that the service is bad now, but I don't know of anything under the sun that can't be improved and shouldn't be improved if the opportunity is there. As a commissioner, I learned that sometimes doing the right thing wasn't always the easy thing. In fact, it was usually the hardest thing to do. And to learn to separate my personal feelings from representing my constituents was difficult at times. I know everybody's on one side or the other, a lot of hard feelings. I know there are two people in this room tonight that I have the utmost respect for, that I know I'm on the opposite side of this issue from them, but that doesn't mean I have any less respect for them or their opinion or their views. All I can ask you to do is do what you think's right, no hard feelings. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jay Woodard?
Jay Woodard, thank y'all for letting me speak tonight. 23-year career fireman with Nashville, hold the rank of captain right now in special op. I've been in special operations my whole career. What y'all are deciding on right now is pretty much the way Nashville does it and has done it for a long time. You've got one person that everything answers to. He runs all three departments and what y'all are proposing now. And I think y'all owe it to the citizens and yourself to improve this across the board. I think just standing and listening to the meeting, I think y'all had asked Mr. Beatty about some things. I think that's where the feelings got involved in it, especially since he was y'all's, other than Emergency Services Committee, he was y'all's expert that y'all could draw from. I think then once a lot of people started assuming that he was going to be put in that position other than Mr. Beatty. You know, my understanding is that position, whoever it may be, is going to be an open invitation type application. Y'all are going to have to approve it, Emergency Services and the mayor. So moving this forward don't have anything to do with Mr. Beatty or Mr. Beeler. It has doing the right thing for the county to move forward so these services improve for everybody here. Thank you.
Brian King?
I would agree with the two gentlemen before me and mirror what they say, but this is essentially a business decision for accountability and efficiency to provide better services. And there's no such thing as a place where we can't do better somewhere along the line. If we don't continue to strive towards better or perfection, then we're going backwards. If we're not growing, we're shrinking. I know when I go to the polls to vote, and I vote for a president or a senator or councilman, I'm hoping that that person will have the wisdom and the foresight to vote for what's good for the greater good of the community, not necessarily for me, but for the greater good. Maybe even at their own expense sometimes, but for the greater good. That being said, I really would like to see this postponed until we have a hard and fast budget on paper that can be vetted through the proper committees, and let everybody digest it and ask questions about it before we move forward. Because as a business decision, I think it is unreasonable to ask this council to vote without numbers. Now, I personally am forming the opinion that I am all for this. I think it is a good thing for this community, but I would not vote for it if I were in your shoes tonight until I saw the budget. Now, I think there's a lot of folks in this room who have their minds made up one way or the other. I doubt there's very many people that are on the fence about this. I respect that. Everybody that I've met in this town, and I've met people on both sides of this, I have a lot of respect for. We've got a lot of really intelligent, educated, articulate people who have good views. But that being said, I would ask you to imagine one thing. I would ask you to imagine that we all stand up tonight and we walk out the front door and we're going to get on a bus. We're going to go to West Tennessee, to a town you've never seen or heard of, where you don't know a soul. Would you still vote the same way? Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Russell?
Hello, my name's Thomas Russell. I was a fireman here for about 15 years. I quit last February. Multiple reasons. One reason is this, right here. I think it's silly. I don't know why you want to pay a lesser fireman to come save my family. The fire department down there, they train more than EMS does on EMS things. They've also doubled their training. The county asked the fire department 2 years ago when they got the first ISO rating, hey, if you train more, taxes go down, the ISO rating goes down. Well, guess what? They did that. You get your tanker here, it's going to drop again. So I guess we're not going to save thousands of dollars on insurance or anything that would go to pay for a fire department. And if you think $9,000 is going to pay a full-time fireman, you're out of your minds, guys. I'm sorry, it's just not realistic. Wish I had the speech I had last month. It was a whole lot better. I'm going to give you some quick facts. Half the folks down there, you think you got 10 firemen down there? You don't. Half of them have barely any experience. I saw the most illegal and life-threatening training in my life at the hands of EMA attempting to gain fire department certification. And you can have that piece of paper in your hand, that makes you a certified fireman by the state of Tennessee, but that's all it does. It doesn't make you a good fireman, it doesn't make you a fireman that's going to come rescue somebody. I love all the folks down there, but half of them are not coming into a house to save you. They're not. You have an EMA director that sent people into a dangerous situation they hadn't trained in over a year. The only time I've ever kissed my wife and said, I may not be back, but I'm going, is when I was sent by an EMA director to go rescue folks out of a cave that Trazo County had no business going to. You hadn't trained in over a year. The first person you protect is your fellow fireman. Only reason I went that day is because Danny Sullins was going, and I wasn't going to let him kill Danny Sullins if there was something I could do about it, and that's the truth. That's a horrible feeling to have to look at your spouse and say that. And that's what you're going to get. You hand this over to EMA, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get dangerous trainings, you're going to get people's lives put in jeopardy for what? For no reason. More firemen are hurt during training than any other time, during fires or anything. That's why there's laws. You don't set cars on fire and send them with upholstery and plastic and then send a fireman in there who can't even use an air pack. Well, hope he doesn't die. I begged our EMA director personally to train the fire department when I was on it. We were denied training. Never got that. EMA has been paid $1,000 to go train all over the United States on my tax dollars, and I couldn't get any of that training. The fire department was denied training. The fire department tried to work with EMA. We were denied it. Sounds like a good leader to me. The fire department can be a revenue-generating organization. It can make its own money. I know people don't want to be taxed, but if you burn your shed down in your backyard, it used to be a meth lab, it was supposed to be cleaned up the right way. That's a fine. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Melvin Lewis.
Mr. Chairman, county court members, visitors, I'm just here to appeal to your better judgment. First off, I'm going to go with Mr. King. How much is this going to cost? Initially, how much is it going to cost in a year and in 2 years? Well, I'll give you an example. If you travel from here to Lebanon on 231, there's a brand new fire hall that's equipped with EMTs and with the fire department. If it's, my suggestion is that the EMTs and the fire department come together as a committee and go research this and see how much it's going to cost. Because basically, it's like a business, like Mr. King said. We have to run this county as a business, and we're going to go under. And the other thing is, with this new road that's coming in out here at 141 and 10, now everybody needs to listen to this. That's going to be a bypass. It's going to bypass Hartsville. And every morning, I go out here and I see hundreds of cars passing. In 2 or 3 years, they're not coming here anymore. So we need to think about this as a business. Are we going to be left in the dark and we're going to have all these bills? And just think about it as a business.
Mr. Hunt.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Will Hunt. I live in District 8. I'm also currently on the Emergency Services Committee, and I was previously on the Emergency Services Committee years ago. We have been talking about this situation for over 4 or 5 years. We have studied the issue numerous times. We have we studied the budget too. I have 11 years of owning a private ambulance service in Nashville. After that, I went to work for Wilson County Emergency Management to become a firefighter, where I became a firefighter as I already was an EMT. I was with them for almost 11 years. So I feel like I have a little bit of experience in this area. The topic that has always been in our committee is how to improve our emergency services. That's one thing we've always discussed, and it's always been on our minds of how to put our services together and make them better for the community. Our committee asked the state to come in, and we asked, what would it look like if we merged these two these departments and put them all together? And the state agreed that merging them was a good idea because it is happening all across America. All across Tennessee, emergency services are coming together as one to be better prepared and better trained. That's why we decided to try the merger. The merger will improve response times out of the fire hall as much as 3 to 5 minutes. It will also, and that is a game changer, ladies and gentlemen, for the people who live outside of the old city limits of Clarksville. If you live out in District 8, 3 to 5 minutes makes a big difference on that fire truck getting. Maybe some of our current volunteers in the fire department want to become EMTs or first responders, firefighters, EMTs, so that they can go to other departments and get full-time jobs, but they can also be trained here inside this county to be those members of our group. And I'm not knocking the volunteers we have. I think they're all fine, and they are training, and they are trying their jobs. We're just trying to make things better. Would also increase the firefighters by about 9, and possibly more people would join the department if these were merged. There are people that have said they would. These are just a few of the possibilities and the positives of why we should look at putting these departments together. I close with this. I've not missed many meetings since being back on the emergency services, and there's very few commissioners in here tonight that I ever saw at any of the emergency services committees. Nor did nor did very many of you come and ask any questions about how this has been discussed or what we've been discussing. I am concerned the commissioners are voting tonight mainly on personal views and not on what is best for the community. But let's not carry an attitude, like I heard from one particular commissioner, that no one has died yet. Our community deserves better than that. I wish that you would vote yes on this,
Mr.
and I
Hunt.
thank you for listening.
Wrap it up, please. Thank you, sir. Scott Graves.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Scott Graves. I'm fairly new here. I bought land here about 10 years ago, stayed here on the weekend. I loved it so much that I sold out of Davidson County and moved out here permanently about 3 years ago. So I say that to say, I'm new. I don't know very many people in this room. I'm not influenced by anybody in this room. But I will tell you that I have been to every single meeting for the last several months on this topic, and I've listened to a lot of very intelligent sounding people cite a lot of intelligent sounding reasons why this is a good idea. I know there's a faction of people that are passionately opposed to it, and I understand why you are. I get it. It could change your life personally in some way, and that's always a scary thing. But to Mr. King's point, the greater good is what's involved here. I ask that you make a decision that is for the greater good. And since we're dealing with emergency and fire, a decision not to do anything could potentially be a deadly decision in the future. So, I ask that we get past our personal preferences and vote for what's best for the community. I also want to thank the volunteer fire department tonight. When I first moved here, my house was under construction. Darn near burned down the northwest rectangle of Trousdale County, my house with it. And the volunteer fire people were there until 8 o'clock at night with me running up and down the hill with buckets of water and everything else, trying to put out all the smoldering ashes. So I thank you for your service. But I think we have some room for improvement. At the rate we're growing in this county, if you don't stay ahead of the infrastructure side of that, you're going to get caught unprepared. And like I said, that could be potentially deadly. I also want to agree with Mr. King's point about a budget. I don't know a lot about running a township, but I have run a business for a number of years, and I do know something about that. I've never made an important decision without financial support. So rather than a vote tonight, I would request that we see a budget that's approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? This is your public meeting. Okay, come on.
My name is Shirley Chambers. Yes, I'm the marriage mother, but believe me, I have not asked him one time how he feels about this. This is a very sensitive thing, so I haven't asked. Please believe me, I have. And if you know it, you know I have. Only thing I want to say, how many commissioners have talked to the people in your district to see what they think about this? It's a very, very complicated thing. Nothing that can be discussed unless you have finances. I looked it up, a fireman can make $35,000 a year. Now, our volunteer fire department is not going to stay volunteers if their people are getting paid that much money. If you're going to make positions here and you're going to pay them top dollars, the firemen are going to be offered the job first to see what comes out. But the only thing I want to ask you, if, like you said a while ago, you're trying to keep stuff, you don't have to raise the taxes, the senior citizens in this county cannot afford any more taxes. We're straight to make what we have. And I am a senior citizen. I live on what I have. My husband does too. But what I want to know is, just ask yourself, I have talked to people out of almost every district in this county. A lot of them say, we can't afford it. What's the budget? There isn't one. Well, then why are they discussing it if there's no budget? How can you do anything if you don't have a budget? You can't. Not if you're true to yourself and you put the people that elected you in your district. So if you haven't talked to these people, found out how they feel in your district, at least make 3 calls to 3 different people in your district, see what they say. Please don't vote this today. Please don't. I wouldn't want to say anything, I would keep, but when we start talking about raising taxes, we can't afford any more taxes. But please, just think about that. If you have not talked to the people in your district who elected you, then don't do this. Please postpone it until you have a budget that's going to tell these people what they're going to have to work with. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? You can speak now.
Yes, sir, I am. I've passed out some materials, and that's to follow up on a request from the county commission from last month's meeting. And also to kind of follow up on, I did listen to a recording of last Monday's work session. I will admit I skipped through some of the, to me, least interesting parts, and got to some of the ones I thought were more interesting, specifically discussion I had with Mr. Ferguson, and you were in the room, Mr. Ford. I did have someone call me and ask if that was a violation of the Sunshine Law, and I said, no, it's not, because Mr. Ferguson was speaking to me, Mr. Ford was in the room, but he did not speak, he did not ask any questions, Mr. Ferguson did not address him at all, Mr. Ferguson was speaking to me about the issue of the fire department. He was asking my opinion, and I gave him his opinion, and I respect his opinion, and we differ on this. But one of the things I talked about and he addressed, and he was completely forthright and honest when he spoke about it at Monday's work session. The biggest thing I guess harped on, because it's 2 hours and I didn't budge on it, was I thought the EMA ought to be separate from the fire department. Some of the material I handed out kind of goes along with that. If you look at one thing, it says National Charter at the top, says Department of Fire. It should be 2 pages. The highlights on it. This section here is from the National's Charter. This chapter 3, they call it the Department of Fire, and it's section 8.301. It says created. There shall be a Department of Fire which shall consist of the director thereof and such other officers and employees of such ranks and grades as may be established by ordinance, which shall include such bureaus, divisions, and units as may be provided by ordinance or by regulations of the director consistent therewith. So that specifically gave Nashville City Council the authority to pass an ordinance that created bureaus, divisions, or units under the fire department. If you will flip to the second page, this is an actual ordinance. Should be ordinance 2.28.030, should be highlighted toward the bottom of your page. Section A of that section, so this subsection A, says there is created within the Metropolitan Fire Department a division of emergency ambulance and rescue service for the purpose of providing emergency ambulance service to the citizens of metropolitan government. I also handed out an organizational chart, should say Metropolitan Government of Nashville. This comes from, I believe, 2017 ordinance, 2017 audit of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County. And it shows the structure of the executive departments under the mayor for Davidson County. You will notice the two highlighted, one says Department of Fire, and down the second to the last department says Office of Emergency Management. They did not merge their EMA with their fire department. They did merge their ambulance, rescue, and fire department all into one entity, but their EMA is separate. It has separate staff, has separate job responsibilities. They did, however, appoint the same gentleman, he's the director over both the fire department and the EMA. But the EMA structurally is a separate department under the mayor. And that's what I would like to see Trousdale County do, because one of the last things I handed out should be a 4-page document, says Appendix 7 of the Basic Plan, County Resolution, Local Government Emergency Management Agency. This is a 2004 resolution that Trousdale County Commission passed creating the EMA for Trousdale County. And it lays out the responsibilities. One of the things it says, if you look at it, whereas, it should be the 5th paragraph down. It says, whereas a single office of Hartsville, Trousdale County government needs to coordinate, supervise, and otherwise promote disaster mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. And there's also a provision in here, it should be on the second page, section 3, subsection A. It says primary authority. It says the Office of Director of Emergency Management is hereby created. The director shall have the authority to request declaration of the existence of an emergency by the county mayor. And the last sentence of that subsection says the director is hereby given the authority to delegate such responsibility and authority as necessary to carry out the purpose of this resolution, subject to the approval of the Hartsville-Trousdale County Mayor, who shall oversee the agency to assure an effective and efficient program. And also says in here that the emergency management is to coordinate like disaster response, man-made disaster, whether it's terrorism attack, anything like that, with not only the emergency services, but also it can be the Public Works Department, the Highway Department, it can be the Sheriff's Department. That's why I feel the EMA needs to be a separate department under the mayor. And this is also a statutorily created agency. And it gives the mayor the appointment power, and it leaves the county commission the authority to make an appointment of the mayor subject to confirmation by the county commission, which Trousdale County did. But right now, under our charter, we have an appointment for the fire chief, but actually, I don't have to appoint anyone if I don't want to. I'm the head of the fire department. But traditionally, we do it because I don't know how to fight a fire, so I'm not going to serve in that capacity. So we have an appointment for the fire chief, and we have an appointment for an EMA director. I do not believe those two departments should be merged. Now, that does not address the ambulance service, rescue, and fire. I'm specifically talking about the emergency management agency. I think that needs to be left separate to deal with some of these issues. So I would ask the commission if it could amend the ordinance that's in front of you tonight to exclude the emergency management agency.
Thank you, Mayor. When we had our meeting, that was one of the topics that came up, and actually, I happen to agree with you. I think that it does weaken the office, as we had discussed, with the mayor's ability to appoint certain people and the natural input together in terms of the management. So I have to say I agree 100%. So I asked him to ask if we could strike that out of that issue to more closely reflect what Nashville did when they did what they did. And they said, yes, we could. And so I do have a copy for everybody tonight where it has been taken out of the ordinance, so we could amend the ordinance. And we could could do that tonight, but I will say this to the commissioners, that I hear what those people tonight about to speak said. And one of the issues that is at hand is that we would like to see a written budget of how this would actually look. I happen to agree with him 100%. We have been informed as what we think it would cost to do this. But I think it's time for us as a commission to see it in writing, and actually the people that were involved in showing us what those budgets would look like, or possibly would look like, to have a meeting with you, maybe within the next 30 days. And again, I said before, there's no rush to judgment on this thing. We don't even want to implement this in July 1st anyway. If we want to change that, we could then too. Of course, I'm just giving my opinion, but I think that Mr. King and Mr. Graves, and I think we have Mr. Woodard, and Mark, you know, we ought to see a budget in writing that you see and that we all fully understand. I think that's, and Ms. Chambers, Mother Chambers, I agree with her too. I mean, it's right. So I would like for us to, if we want to amend the charter, the amendment that has been presented to us tonight, we can go ahead and amend it now and we'll do it later. But I certainly think that what you have stated is one of your concerns. It is valid, and I totally agree with it. So.
I did forget to cover one handout. It's just the organizational structure. I amended what Mr. Cross and Ian Tass have handed out. Basically, the only thing that I did was remove the EMA from that. Everything else remained the same. And I did, forgive me, I did change one other thing. I removed one of the assistant director positions under the fire/rescue department. Going by the fire department's current bylaws, they provide for 2 assistant fire chiefs, which Mr. Beatty and Mr. Beeler, I think, have said in the past, they thought this would kind of be kind of the same thing, just called a different name. So to comply with the bylaws of the fire department, I just made 2 assistant chief positions. The 3rd chief position that was there before, I feel was probably more responsibilities of the deputy chief, who would essentially be over the fire department versus the organizational structure I presented here.
So I would like to ask that we not take any action on this tonight.
We still on the public hearing right now. We can close the public hearing.
I have no say.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, when the commissioners would raise their hand, I believe you got it up first, Mr. George.
Motion to close public hearing.
Motion and second to close the public hearing. I don't think there'll be any discussion on that. All in favor of closing the public hearing, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed to the no vote? Now, we're back to the original ordinance.
I'd like to make a motion that we do not take any action on this tonight, that we see some hard figures. And I think that the mayor's office would be a place where we should start with that, let them see that, maybe review it with, maybe once he sees it, then he just show it with the emergency services committee as well as budget and finance. I know it's a little early for budget and finance, but why not?
Is there a motion, Mr. First?
I make a motion that we,
The motion is to put it on to do
that's correct.
the mayor gets the
That's correct.
Ms. Jones? Have a second by Ms. Jones. Any further discussion on it? Mr. Dickey?
I agree with you. I like to go out and bring out the service and impact.
Any other discussion? Yes, Mr. Wallace.
You have to put a date, don't bring it up again.
Next commission meeting. Mayor, would that give you time, would that give us all time to come? You gotta get your schedule.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what was
Just
said.
wants to know from me, if we could set a date, when we would take this action back up and consider it again. Just by next commission meeting, we get some things.
Well, I would think by the next commission meeting, we should be getting down into the budget time. I know Ms. Thomas and myself are going to have a meeting tomorrow and what's presented so far. And I'm going to be devoting more of my time to working on the budget going forward, so hopefully I'm going to reserve time so we can work on that.
Yeah, coincide with it.
Yes, sir. We're getting to where more departments are submitting their budget. That's something we're going to start reviewing. We actually set out time tomorrow to start reviewing what's been submitted to the mayor's office. And like I said, I'm going to set aside more time on my schedule to work on the budget because we're coming up on that time, and that's one of the biggest, actually it is the biggest responsibility of the county government is to pass a budget, and I want to make sure we have that done by the time we're statutorily required to do so. So, I guess in answer your question,
Yes, thank you. So I'll go ahead and add that to the motion.
Move back up this month. We have this motion for the book forward. This motion.
Actually, I think we ought to look around to the different committee, we ought to go back and really got the numbers from where the source of the funding was going to come from, which was the EMS. We should start there, but I don't know if we can limit ourselves to that. You know, Mayor, if you could help us with that, try to come up with different entities that might be helpful with budget, maybe talk to the intern fire chief, about what he sees, EMS, anybody else, I don't know. Even make a mistake like that, I don't know, but I don't think that would do anything. Mayor, any thoughts on that? Yeah, so much information we can get, let's do it.
are you referring to grants or just kind of general thought about it?
If this were to be placed together, we need to see a hard bill.
Yeah, the only thing I would say, I don't think, now Mr. Beller can correct me, and I'm sure the comptroller's office could do so well, and he may ask their input on it. I don't think any of the earnings of the ambulance service for providing emergency services can be used to fund the fire department. That may be commingling the funds. You can, however, take some of the funds that's currently coming out of the general fund going to the ambulance 118 and put those back in the general fund and then use those specifically to fund whatever it is we're going to do with the fire slash or whatever you decide to do at that time. That, I think that'd probably be the best course of action because I don't think you can use any of those funds that the ambulance service gets going out and responding to a 911 call of somebody having a heart attack. I don't think you can use those funds to supplement the fire department.
And those are the types of things that they would use before the next meeting.
Yeah, that's something that Ms. Thomas and I have discussed, and we're going to try to get a more concrete answer on it. But my initial thought is I don't think that would be the proper course of action as far as using the funds generated by the ambulance service. Now, the tax funds, the taxes going to that, that's different. You can divert those back to the general fund.
Ms. Johnson, you had your hand up. Mr. Wood?
Point of order, I'm not sure this motion is in order. I think that we probably should dispose of this ordinance, either vote it out, vote it down, and then bring it back as a new ordinance, rewritten. I'm not sure as legal advice that this is in order.
This ordinance, so they can't clarify, because they have a new ordinance, so it's a postponement, which we have in place, so you understood the motion.
Ms. Johnson? Speak up.
What's it going to be different next month, this month? I mean, if we're not sure what we're doing, how do we know how much money to put?
I believe the postponement was to set up a budget to see what was going to cost. Now, you still would probably have to amend the motion to do what the mayor's wanting to do, which I think is right. But you can postpone the whole thing, bring it up the next meeting, and then amend the motion to take out the ambulance department. Mary Ann, you had your hand up.
Well, that was my question, is that the ordinance that's before us now, it includes the EMA. We're wanting to separate that. So should we go ahead and do away with this and then come back with another ordinance that has them separated?
You don't have to, you can postpone it to the next meeting and do it then.
But then we're going to be right back where we are.
You figure out where we are right now, you just, if we can get the money in place, but then, the mayor wants to take out the health department. What we gotta do is amend that motion, pass the amendment, and take it out.
Mr. Chairman, I want to remove the emergency management agency, not the emergency medical services. So ambulance department, under what I'm proposing, just to remove EMA from the equation, that still leaves the ambulance service doing the fire and rescue. I'm just taking out the emergency management, which is to coordinate, come up with an overall alternative plan in response to any disasters, whether man-made or natural.
This ordinance includes the EMA, so you're going to postpone it, and at the next meeting, you're going to amend this ordinance to take the EMA out, and then vote on the separate ordinance. To me,
The only reason to postpone it was to get some money to go to these budgets. Now, if you wanted to, I guess, take it out tonight, you could, but, you can do it next month, just as easy as you can now. Ms. Jones?
It is my understanding that you can take something out with this ordinance and it's not, as long as you don't add something to it.
That is correct.
My goal is just to let them sit down and talk about budgetary matters, but I heard what the city was saying tonight. We can do this tonight, or we can do it next month, that doesn't matter. I don't really see that.
Really doesn't matter if you do it tonight or next month.
You know, I'm gonna propose it next month, but it's another time, I agree with you.
Your motion is to postpone it to next month.
Only the motion I have.
And, Ms. Jones seconded the motion. We just want to discuss it. Any other discussion?
yes,
Ms.
I'm sorry.
Baker?
Next month, you're going to make a motion to remove the EMA, and then we're going to be asked to vote on it. But, and when are you going to present the figures to us? The figures, the ordinance doesn't have the figures in it. So are you, I know they don't have them in there, our ordinance doesn't have the figures, but are you going to, by next month, will you have a budget to give to us to look at? Or is it gonna be when we come in next month, you're gonna hand us a piece of paper that it just has EMA out of it and we're asked to vote?
No.
No, we'll have to verbally vote on taking it out.
We'll have to have a budget, I don't see what the rush to do this.
Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, I agree with what Bill said, but why don't we go ahead tonight and take the EMA out of it, and that way we can have everything done for next month when we get the budget number.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. I can't have one motion at a time. You don't withdraw your motion, you accept it, Ms. Jones? But if you want to take it out tonight, it can be done. I just need a motion. Mr. Wallace?
Make a motion to exclude the EMA.
Do I hear a second? Second by Commissioner Clary. Any discussion, everybody know what we're doing? Mayor's going to take the EMA out of it. And he gave you a good reason why, he was ready to.
This is how the ordinance will be amended according to the intent. If I want to see, I got a copy of it.
Any more discussion?
This is my only question is, I don't like being given information and asked to vote that night. I like to look at the material and review it a couple of days before I'm asked to vote on it.
I agree with you.
I feel like that's what's going to be missing.
Commissioner Martin?
I agree with you, but that's the way it's been a long time, you get stuff handed out, but not everything.
Maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's what, just because it's always been there.
We're out of order, you don't have the floor. Mr. Martin? You through? Shane, you have anything without telling you?
What the lady is asking is she wants to see some numbers before 5 minutes to 7 at the next meeting. And I believe there's probably a lot more commissioners that would like to see some numbers before 5 minutes to 7 at our next meeting.
Yes.
When are we gonna see the numbers?
Yes, and where is that? We're gonna work it out. You call me?
Okay.
We'll try to have them ready by Budget and Finance Committee.
Okay. let
That
me
gives
ask
us
you-
3 weeks, and you're going to have to realize that's going to be based on a lot of assumptions.
I know, assumptions are fine, evidently these people want to see some numbers, and let's show them some numbers. Is that pushing you too much into your budget time to where it messes up this county with the budget? If
I
it
don't
is,
believe so. We
let's
should be
push it
working on
back
the budget
another
already,
month.
so I don't believe so.
Okay, because if it is, let's push it back another month. I mean, we've got budget coming up, very important.
3 months. Michelle, we better have it first, not
Request for recess for 5 minutes.
This is the reason we're here. Let's take a 5-minute recess.
I don't know. Yeah.
We got some more after that. We still got some budget.
Hey, you. Go ahead if y'all want to take a ride. Go ahead and vote. We've been going on this thing for 6 months now.
Anywhere else you go, you gotta do it 3 times. That's what I was told by officer today. That's a lesson we get. I was thinking Let's come back together, please. If we can, let's, quieten down. I believe when we left, we had a motion on the floor to take the EMA out, and a second by Ms. Jones. And that's for Garfield's point. They did the move, right. So Gary amended it, and he seconded it.
Who is the author of this ordinance?
What?
Who wrote the ordinance? Who's the author? Withdrawing the motion.
You amend? You withdraw your second, Gary?
Now I make a motion to throw this ordinance out, have it rewritten, budgetary figures.
You make a motion to throw the ordinance out and we
And come back with a new ordinance that excludes EMA and also some budgetary figures, so we can all what's out there.
Why would you throw it out? You postpone it, you need some vote. I have a motion, to throw the motion out. It's on the floor. And second by Ms. Baker. Now we discuss that. Not everybody wants it.
my understanding is, that's what my mind says.
That's what I understood.
I withdrew my motion to exclude the EMA, and then I brought a new motion to have this ordinance rewritten.
You have it rewritten.
Pull this one out, and then start over from scratch again. So make a new ordinance. First reading, public hearing, second reading, with the EMA excluded. Right. If somebody's got a better idea, bring it up. Or call the vote on my motion.
This motion,
Go ahead, Mr.
this motion, this ordinance is for. I mean, you need to either vote it down or amend it. And I see your amendment could be to amend this ordinance to have that other information in it, but I still think that we have to do something with this ordinance. Or we bring another one back, rewritten. I feel like this needs to either be amended tonight or voted down.
Let's just vote on it. Roll call.
That does go with this motion that's on the floor.
The reason I brought that up is there's a lot of discussion about the budget. We don't have the figures were made, we postponed his initial motion before. If we don't, we can't vote on it. We're still keep dragging it out. So I'm just saying, he's come back, all the questions answered, so we can intelligently vote on the ordinance.
So your motion is to go away with it, rewrite it, and bring it back. When do you want to bring it back? This is a little fun.
Pardon me?
When do you want to bring it back?
Who brought this up in the first place? Who put it in there? That's why I asked who the author of this was, how it got in here, how it came about. That's my initial question, who the author was. And that same author needs to put it back in with the amendment EMA out of it and the budgetary figures.
Commissioner Johnson.
So we're trying to say just to totally hold this down and then bring a new one totally back. That's kind of what. Yes.
That's basically what he's saying. And that's going to cost you another 2 months.
It's going to cost that anyway because figures are going to come in at 5 to 7 in May. And a lot of people's not going to vote one way or the other, they still don't know what to do. That's my
The
point.
mayor said he could come back and figure it in the next budget and finance committee.
All right, Chairman, I withdraw my motion to withdraw this.
And I will turn on my second.
And back to square one again. Mr. Morris.
Oh, question. Vote on that.
We don't have a motion now. We still got the ordinance, but we don't have the motion.
We're going to vote on this one, and I'm going to bring back my motion about excluding EMA.
You're saying you want to put the EMA out?
Yes, I have my motion again to exclude the EMA out of this ordinance.
Do I hear a second to that? Second, by Ms. Jones, now we're discussing that. His motion is to take the EMA out of it. We have a motion and a second. Give your comments if you have any.
This is the second reading. If we vote yes, we're gonna take the EMA out, and everybody agrees on that, it has been approved the second reading.
No, no, no.
Department.
Now, all you vote on with the amendment.
They got to vote on this ordinance.
You gotta vote on the amendment to the motion. This is the amendment to the motion here. Ms. Johnson.
The amendment passes, then I'll vote on it.
The amendment's what's in front of you right now. Ms. Thomas.
Would you unconfuse me? We are
I'll try.
voting now to take the
EMA out.
Amend the motion to take the
All right, so
EMA out.
if we vote down to take the EMA out,
Yes, ma'am.
that's all we're voting on.
Yes, ma'am. You're right. You got it.
Thank you.
And then
Mr.
we
Joe.
will vote, then we will vote on the original ordinance as amended.
If you want to, you can postpone it. I don't know what you want. Any other questions? Are we straight now? We vote on the amendment to remove EMA from the original motion. The ordinance, I'm sorry. Are you ready for the question?
Please.
If you want to take the EMA out, vote yes, okay? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll on this?
Mary Ann Baker. Yes. Ken Buckman.
Yes.
Shane Burton.
Yes.
Gary Clary.
Yes.
Troy Higgins.
Yes.
Bill Burton.
Yes.
Gary Ford.
Yes.
Bud Ruger.
Yes.
Landon Dove.
Yes.
Richard Marsh.
Yes.
Dwight Hill.
Yes.
Linda Johnson. Richard Johnson.
Yes.
Rachel Jones.
Yes.
David Holler.
Yes.
Amber Russell. Yes. Grace Thomas.
Yes.
Gary Walsh.
Yes.
Steve Whitaker.
Yes.
Justin Green.
Yes.
Now we have a motion for an ordinance still on the floor that has eliminated EMA. So as it stands, it will be the EMS and fire department. Mr. First.
Yeah, now we're back to our original, what we had talked about before, where the mayor, we'd asked if they could come up with some budgetary things, which is what the citizens in the vote tonight talked about. They like to have more time, they were in favor of it for the most part, but they wanted to see hard figures. Now we have a budget finance committee, we have a emergency services committee, we have time on our hands. I'm gonna make a motion that we delay any action on this amended order.
You need to put a time frame on it. Next month,
Yes.
Ms. Jones. We have a motion and a second to postpone ordinance as amended until next month. Any discussion on that? Mr. First.
Yeah, it gives the mayor time, this is something the mayor and I had discussed, that he felt strongly about, he was right. So we've done that, I think that now it's time to look at the figures. Again, let me say, you don't need to just get your figures in one place, but let's ask him to do that, let's just see what we come up with.
Ms. Thomas.
And he's gonna have the figures for us by the work session, right?
He said through budget and finance, Mr. Member, to do a work session. We'll try to, yes, ma'am. Any other comments? Ms. Johnson?
This, and the amount will just be an estimate, it's like kind of all getting put on there now, but it's just gonna be estimated on, I mean, there's no way to have any solid.
Probably have a pretty good idea. We start, we know the blind on the Any other comments? Mr. Belly?
So we're back at the same place where, when will this material be put in my hands? I appreciate getting material, but I don't appreciate getting this, 6:55.
What matter is
It will be in our hands by work session? Did I
I
miss
hope so,
something?
yeah.
Can we put that in, is what I'm asking, that it can be?
Well, the mayor said he thought he'd have it by time of budget and finance, so we have it by budget and finance, you certainly have it in the work session. You don't need a motion for that. Anything else?
Question.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, does it give you enough time without pushing you?
I believe it does, because if nothing else, I'll just structure it the way I want it, and that's what you'll vote on.
Little humor tonight, guys, little humor. Any other questions? I think they killed it all. Are you ready for the question? Oh, Madam Chairman. Postpone it to hold it in a minute. Well, let's see.
Beverly Atkins. Mary Ann Baker. No. Ken Buckman.
No.
Shane Burton.
Yes.
Gary Clary.
Yes.
Roy Higgins,
Yes.
Bill Ferguson,
Yes.
Jerry Ford,
Yes.
Bud Gregory, Landon Dillon,
Yes.
Richard Hart,
Yes.
Dwight York,
No.
Linda Johnson, Richard Johnson,
No.
Rachel Jones,
Yes.
David Narman,
Yes.
Amber Russell,
No.
Grace Thomas,
Yes.
Gary Walsh,
Yes.
Steve Whitaker,
No.
Justin Freeman,
No.
11 yes, 9 no.
Motion carried, it will be postponed to the next meeting. All right, we spent half the night, now let's move on. Ordinance 178, 2019, 88, rezoning city lands R1 and Flowers Street. So it was recommended by the planning commission that we do this. It shows you right there in the paper. This is Billion Enterprises. Yes, it is a public hearing on it, exactly right. Anybody wishing to speak to this? It's a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? If not, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Ken Buckmaster made the motion, Mr. Hart seconded to close the public hearing. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Any opposed with no vote? Mr. Joel.
Move to pass ordinance on the second reading.
Motion by Mr. Joel, second by Ken Buckmaster to pass the motion on the second reading. Any other discussion at this point? Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed with a no vote? Ayes have it. I believe we're ready to go to budget amendments. 2019-101-19 FB is a $10,000 draw from fund balance for data processing services. It was approved by the Communication Committee. It was approved by the Budget and Finance Committee. What is your take on this? Motion by Ms. Baker, second by Ms. Russell. Any discussion on it? This is a draw from 101. Any discussion? Yes.
Is there a counter on the current website to see how many times it was researched and say the past year?
I have no earthly idea.
Unless we have a young lady over there.
That answer your question?
Yeah, it's not hard.
Any other questions, comments, answers? Mr. Belly, you got your hand up.
You said this is a draw from 101?
Draw from 101, yes. Then half a cent, the tax rate.
Sorry, I'm in the wrong, it's in the amended version from last week, sorry.
Mr. Joel.
I wanted to say that we can't proceed with the contract for them to develop the website unless we have money appropriated to be able to obtain it. We probably will not be paid, maybe not even in this year, but we have to have it appropriated to be able to start. So I just want everybody to be clear with that. It's not like you're gonna write them a check tonight for it may actually go into the next budget. So we have to have the money set aside.
Any other comments? Any other comments? Last call. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll for this spend money.
Mary Catherine? Yes. Mary Ann Baker? Yes. Ken Buckmaster?
Yes.
Shane Burson?
No.
Gary Clary?
Yes.
Roy Hickey? Yes. Bill Ferguson?
Yes.
Gary Ford?
Yes.
Bubba Gregory? Landon Dodge?
Yes.
Richard Marsh?
Yes.
Dwight Jewell?
Yes.
Linda Johnson? George Johnson?
Yes.
Rachel Jones?
No.
David Moller?
Yes.
Amber Russell?
Yes.
Grace Thomas?
Yes.
Gary Walsh?
No.
Steve Whitaker?
Yes.
Justin Freeman?
Yes.
17 yes, 3 no.
Motion passes. Let's move on to budget amendment 2019-101-17. This is a grant that the mayor talked about, for the Parks and Fair Board Engineering Service for $20,000. Notice I said grant. That's money that's hopefully coming to us. It's not money that's coming out of our 101 fund. A motion by Ms. Linda Johnson, a second, any word? Second by Ms. Thomas. Any discussion? Mr. Norman.
But wasn't they gonna talk about spending this money on?
That's a big engineering firm. This is for engineering fees to those study. All this one is directly for engineering.
It's just a study, David, that's right. Go ahead, Mayor, if you will speak to it.
Yes, so this is to come up with a master plan to improve the park. There'll be periods of public input to see what the public would like to do at the park as far as improvements. And then at the end of it, they'll present us with an actual master plan as to what we can do to improve the park, and then we can use that. The next year, there should be about an $85,000 competitive grant, and we can use this to supplement our application and show what we're going to use that fund for. And it was explained to us that if we had something like that, that we could submit along with an application. That is, this is, I don't say it puts us at the head of the pack, but it really puts us in a better standing to get approved for that grant if we can show specifically what we want to use that money for and that we have a plan in place.
I'd like to speak to that because every 2 years, the state of Tennessee issues out grants to apply for us. And I'm working with some customers right now that's going through that process. And the process has slowed it down more, even if they get the grant, slow it down, or anything else, the environmental stuff. So we're doing it on the front end, which I think will help us on the grant, and it'll fast track what decisions might be made on getting money. It's usually a 50-50 grant. If we wanted to try to get, you get what you get to get half price. But if you're doing the environment on the front end, you're doing it a big favor.
Any other comments? Any question? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed with a no vote? Ayes have it. The next three are all interdepartmental transfers. We can have them one by one, or we can have them all at once. All at once. Okay. Budget amendment 2019-101-18. It's animal shelter, revenues for animal adoption was $475, revenues for the shelter adoptions $338. Appropriating shelter revenues to the shelter building maintenance expense $813. If you return the page, budget amendment 2019-131-03 is for $109,000 to allocate funds for purchase of tobacco from the highway department, 131 fund. Both these were approved by the planning of the Budget and Finance Committee. That's what I have to put in front of you, Ms. Jones. Motion by Ms. Jones, second by Ms. Johnson, Linda Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed with a no vote? Ayes have it. We have two notaries tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Ashley Scott Works at Donahoe Taylor and Taylor, Kyle Rutter, I believe it's going to be, CCA. Need a motion. Got a motion by Ms. Atwood, second by Mr. Gill. All in favor of the two motions, let it be known by saying aye. I want to take just a second and tell you guys how much I appreciate the way you've acted tonight. It's been a little bit better. I'm going to say you. Yes, Mr. Wallace.
Take a motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second? Second by Brother Bridger. All in favor, say aye. Let's go home, man. I want you to let me know.
I'm a heavy sleeper, get your call. Decision.